This is in danger of becoming a tradition because when you do something once, it's an incident. When you do something twice, it's a pattern. When you do something 3 times, it's a tradition. And so we're in danger of that because I thought, remember, you may recall if you were here last night that Dr. Barbara Fahey in our history department was retiring, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to have Barbara come and say a few words and in the context of Founders Day and reflect on her service to the college and have some fun. And so we thought that might be fun to do again, and we had actually a number of people to choose from, but it struck me that Dr. William King, better known to everybody as Bill King, would be a worthy successor and the potential of the beginning. If he screws it up royally, of course, that'll be the end of that. It was like a bad idea, but I really doubt that'll be the case. Bill is a retiring professor of religious studies. His scholarly interests are really interesting to me and wide-ranging, from 19th and 20th century American religious experiences to Native Americans' contacts with Euro-Americans, to prehistoric Native Americans, rock art in southeast Utah of all places. This guy is an intrepid adventurer, probably more comfortable in boots and shorts and a t-shirt than in a suit and tie. But appreciate you dressing up for us, Bill. He has played a key role in many aspects of our college, helping as a founder of our Multi-Faith Center, but most importantly, by far, being a beloved and distinguished teacher, professor, mentor, and guide now to many years of students here. So why don't you join me in welcoming our distinguished friend and Professor Bill King to offer us a few thoughts.
And Kathy Caponcelli asked me last week, she said, would you make a few remarks to everyone? And I said, sure. And then I looked at the program, and it says Founders Day Address. Okay. Of course, I am a preacher, so I always come prepared. And I do want to thank you for spending the time to listen to me and giving me a couple of minutes here to reflect on what some of my experiences have been as a longtime faculty member at Albright College. And I have to confess that I worry about reminiscing. I discovered the pitfalls of looking backwards a little too often when I was hiking in some of those canyons in southeast Utah a few years ago. My wife kept telling me, watch the horizon, keep looking forward, train your vision on the landscape, or we'll get lost, even with the GPS. And she's absolutely right. In that convoluted maze of canyons that is southeast Utah, there are no permanent trails, there are no trail markers, there are no signposts to mark the way. We had to focus on the subtle changes in the terrain to keep our bearings. For example, in one 50-mile long canyon named Grand Gulch, there were only 4 trails that led out. The nearest residences were 25 miles away, the nearest water was 20 miles away, and in 3 days of hiking, we met only 4 other hikers. Everything else was just canyons and sagebrush. In a way, teaching at Albright has been a little bit like navigating a 30-year-long canyon. The landscape has been stunning, beautiful, but at times treacherous. It changes quickly. I'm really glad you mentioned Warren Klein, by the way, and their pictures of the Pfeiffers are up in the chapel, by the way. It changes very quickly. Certainly our physical surroundings, have changed. They're not what they were when I arrived with Dave Martin and 3 others in 1983. At that time, there were still clay tennis courts where the parking lot is now. The Fine Arts Center was not yet completed. North Hall and the softball and soccer fields were not there. Instead, in the months of April and May, 9 and 10-year-olds who were Little Leaguers, organized, by the way, by the indomitable Stratton Marmaru, played their young hearts out on makeshift ball fields while local parents yelled at coaches and umpires like me. But no one swore at Marmaru. Some of you don't remember Stratton, but if you read the newspaper, you do. The entire college administration, including human resources, business offices, and admissions, were housed on the first floor of the administration building. Shirk Stadium was crumbling. The Bowman Center was unpleasant and outdated. The walk from student residences to the farthest corner of the campus, where for some reason the chapel is located in religious studies, was dreary. A lot has changed. More importantly, the academic landscape has changed. It has steadily deepened, despite occasional flash floods like financial exigency in 1993, and the erosion in the size of the faculty to 66, less than half of what it is now. I know because Phil Eyrich and I had the bitter task of co-chairing the faculty committee that heard the appeals of terminated colleagues. But the faculty who remained toughed it out. And a lot did change, mostly due to the grit and cantankerousness of CFO Paul Gazzaro, President Ellen Hurwitz, and faculty. As I was saying to Jack Horgan, those were memorable years. In fact, the faculty doubled down and became even more committed to helping the students connect their own personal experiences and hopes to a wider landscape that surrounds us all. They, too, needed help to recognize trail markers and watch their horizons. Staying on the trail, we argued, as a faculty, requires wisdom and guts, not merely competencies. One of those important markers of change on campus has been student and faculty diversity, and we got a wonderful demonstration of that earlier. I have to admit that in 1983, Albright, when I came, seemed to me to be monolithic, very bright, and very white. Leadership was mostly male. But the college chaplain, student leaders, faculty, and administration pulled together as one and developed an innovative plan that we called Unity, whose goal was to teach cultural understanding and to diversify campus culture. The Coleman and Shirk scholarships gave legs to this ideal. It was educational, political, and transformational, all rolled into one, and Albrightians began to venture outside our comfort zones. Other events linger with me, but the one that I still recall with my students today occurred right after September 11th, the attack in New York City. That fall, I happened to be teaching a course on Islam, and my Muslim students failed to show up in class on September 12th. It turns out that their parents had advised them to stay away from campus, fearing retaliation, learning of the violence against Muslims and Sikhs in Berks County. And you have to understand that these were modest and studious students from all over the world, from Turkey, from Senegal, from Saudi Arabia, and African American Muslims from the United States, including Reading. In response, our multi-faith director, our first director actually, Kathy Kelsey, hastily called an impromptu assembly in the chapel. By noon, the chapel was filled mostly with students. There was no program, no agenda, only open mics. One by one, the students lined up and shared personal stories of loss and grief. And then they began to express empathy for the Muslim students on campus, many of whom they did not know personally. And expressing unwavering support for these students, they promised the Muslim students protection and declared the campus would be a safe zone. My students returned on Thursday without fear or incident. For me, this marked a moment of maturity. In the weeks that followed, non-Muslim students asked professors, including myself, and members of the Reading Islamic community to explain authentic Islamic values and how 9/11 could have happened. A unity candlelight vigil was held just outside this building, where ironically there was a sculpture of an airplane flying into a building, and you can still see the marks of that plane. It was later removed out of sensitivity. Once again, the landscape had changed. And finally, I can't close without mentioning some of the people who guided me in those early years, both on this campus and in the city of Reading. Many of these people were members of a yellow brick United Methodist Church located south of 10th Street at 6th and Franklin, which you may know is the Reading Red Light District. This congregation held a lot of Albrightians who were and still are heavily committed to social service ministries. Active Albrightians there included Jean and Anadora Shirk, the Bowman family, Wilbur Gingrich, for whom our Albright's Library is named, Marilyn and Dave Rufer, Albright's president at the time, John Gordon, Albright's chaplain, and Bill Marlowe, Albright's faculty chair. I remember Wilbur Gingrich, who, by the way, wrote the history that Lex was quoting. He was a soft-spoken man, short in stature, with a warm heart, and an even bigger knowledge of New Testament Greek. Even today, seminary students around the country use his Greek-English lexicon, published while he was an Albright professor more than half a century ago. And of course, everyone remembers Gene Shirk as the oldest active coach in the NCAA when Sports Illustrated did a feature on him in 1991, I think it was. But my memories of Gene Shirk are watching him play tennis at the age of 90 and beating me. And then being the first one out of the locker room so that he could meet up with his bowling buddies before dinner. And I fondly remember Gene sitting in the back pews of our church every Sunday with Anadora laughing at the big red bow tie that my 8-year-old son Gregory wore to services. I admired Gene's ability to engage teenagers in roundtable discussions, getting these teens to open up about the issues that were on their minds. My own eldest son and daughter participated in his innovative, interactive BCTV program called Generation Gap. He bridged many gaps, the gap between town and gown. He changed the landscape. And I admired the way President Rufer could wear a chef's hat while cooking up huge pots of spaghetti for church socials, keeping everyone in good spirits as he spilled most of the sauce on people. And Dick Bowman, kept me humble by always asking me theological questions that he knew I couldn't answer. And speaking of humiliation, my first exposure to the Albright student body when I came in 1983 was when our department performed a parody of The Wizard of Oz. Bill Marlowe informed me that I would play the role of the Scarecrow, put me in costume, straw coming out of my ears, and told me to sing a version of If I Only Had a Brain. Other humiliations followed, including the student production of Godspell, in which the student director had me crawling around the front of the big chapel on hands and knees, making noises like a goat before Jesus cast me into hell. It changed me. So for me, these are just some of the moments and the people who enabled me and others to navigate this landscape. What I valued was the way in which faculty, students, administrators, and the wider community have been able to intersect and produce an environment full of criticism and encouragement. I don't want Albright, and I would want Albright to be stuck in the past, but rather to use the past to envision the future and what lies ahead. Janet and I have had fun at Albright. Our children have grown up in the shadow of this campus, and we look forward to seeing what twists and turns lie ahead for the college. Thank you.